Today we're going to visit several places that make Cincinnati a great place to visit. One of the places is right behind the Roebling Bridge, sometimes called the Singing Bridge by many locals because of the unique sound you hear as cars travel over the metal grates. This bridge, designed by famed architect John Roebling. Now, Roebling was born in Prussia in 1806 and immigrated here in 1831. He brought with him this rope suspension bridge design, where these metal strands are strewn together like a rope, and this helps to keep the strength of the bridge. Roebling had designed a bridge in Pittsburgh over the Monongahela River, also one over the Niagara River in New York, and then here in Cincinnati. Now this bridge, interesting, was built in 1856 and took until 1867 because of the Civil War. Construction had halted between those years. Roebling Bridge, which another interesting fact about this is that if you look at it, something should look familiar, and that's because it's a prototype to the Brooklyn Bridge. After constructing this bridge, Roebling would go on to New York and build the Brooklyn Bridge. Unfortunately, during the building process of the Brooklyn Bridge, there was an accident at the wharf where a boat had pinched his foot, and he had to have several toes amputated. Because of that surgical process, Roebling died. We're going to move on from here and go to our next stop, and we're going to visit the Cincinnati Reds, another great Cincinnati history. Welcome to the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati is home to baseball's first and oldest professional baseball team. In 1866, they were simply known as the Cincinnati Red Stockings. Now, while baseball was being played as early as 1850, it was in 1869 that Cincinnati began paying their players professionally. Now, Cincinnati would go on to win 5 World Series, but it was their first World Series in 1919 that was the most controversial. In 1819, the Reds were playing the Chicago White Sox, and several players from the White Sox were allegedly throwing the game. So this taints an otherwise great series between the Reds and the White Sox. Cincinnati had several great Hall of Fame players. Frank Robinson, Barry Larkin, and Ken Griffey Jr. were just some of those great players. Known for the Big Red Machine. During the 1970s, these Reds would go on to win 2 World Series, and players like Tony Perez, Johnny Bench, Davey Concepcion, and of course Pete Rose. Pete Rose would go on to become the baseball's all-time hits leader. Unfortunately, because Rose was caught betting on baseball, he is currently banned from being in the Hall of Fame. Cincinnati also had great managers. Comiskey once managed the Reds. He would go on to the White Sox later. And of course, Sparky Anderson, who managed the Reds during the Big Red Machine era of the 1970s. Cincinnati has always been a baseball town, a baseball city, and for the longest time, every year, because Cincinnati was the first organized professional team, they would have the privilege of having the first game to start the season. That's since changed, and more teams are now, getting that honor. But it's just another great history of Cincinnati is the Cincinnati Reds. While here in Mount Adams, there are several places you can visit. The building behind me is the once famed Rookwood Pottery. It was once owned and operated by Maria Rookwood, whose pottery became an important fixture in American art pottery. Today, the building belongs to the Stand Energy Corporation. The Rookwood Pottery operates out of a small building located in the Overrhine district, often called the OTR by locals. Most folks visit Mount Adams to shop, dine, or visit Eden Park and the Cincinnati Art Museum. There's plenty to do and see here. Now let's head to the heart of the city. Welcome to Fountain Square. Behind me is the Tyler Davidson Fountain. In 1871, this fountain was a gift from Henry Probasco to the city. It was a way to memorialize his brother-in-law, Tyler Davidson. This fountain sits as the center, the cultural center for Cincinnati. Cincinnati is known for its German heritage and had quite a few German immigrants come here. And this fountain was built in Munich, Germany, and brought here in 1871 and dedicated. Today the fountain is used as sort of a concert venues, ice skating, and a lot of other events occur here. It's right in the middle of the Fifth Third Center, and so in many cases you can find people just sitting out here eating lunch or meeting up before heading off to maybe a Reds or Bengals game. And as you can hear the music in the background, there's usually something always happening here at Fountain Square. Hey, let's move on to our next stop, Union Terminal. This is the Cincinnati History Center at Union Terminal. Prior to this becoming a train station, there were several train terminals within the city. But because there were too many, they wanted to consolidate them. And so beginning in 1929, construction began on this, and it began being used as a train station in 1933. Union Terminal is a Art Deco style, and it's actually the largest half-dome building in the Western Hemisphere. During World War II, tens of thousands of travelers were using this train terminal, and it used buses, came through, cable cars, and taxis would drive through the sides of this and drop off passengers or pick up passengers. But after World War II, train travel had declined. More people were using airplanes and just other modes of transportation. In 1972, this facility closed as a train station. But in 1990, it opened up as a museum center, and it housed the Cincinnati Children's Museum, the Cincinnati History Museum, as well as the Natural History Museum. It also has the Robert D. Lindner Omnimax Theater and is the facilities for the Cincinnati Library and Archives, as well as it still actually serves as an Amtrak station for a few trains that leave out of Cincinnati. This structure, folks will come here and they have venues, various parties and that kind of thing that serves here. Now, with all the places that we've seen today, there are still many more places that you can see in Cincinnati. For example, if you were in Mount Adams, you can still go to the Art Museum or Eden Park. Over here, you can still visit the newly FC Cincinnati Stadium. So there's so much that you can see and do in Cincinnati, as well as eat. Those were a lot of places that weren't mentioned were the Cincinnati chili parlors or Cincinnati ice cream. Things like Skyline Chili or Grader's Ice Cream. And that's just a just a couple places of great eats here in Cincinnati. I hope you've enjoyed this tour, and hopefully you can come and visit this wonderful city.